we have a special interview today with author of the book, The One Day Refund, Donna McGeorge, here in the Zoom call. Donna, how are you?
Pretty well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm very interested about this book because the way it's described is a way to earn time back, recovering 15% of your time, 10 minutes a day, and so on. And I'm gonna out a lot of people right now. This radio station is not good with sleep schedules.
I was gonna say the big solution to everyone at this radio station would just be stay away from the office. That's how you get your time back.
So I'm very curious about like how we all here can learn from this book. And the number one thing I think that really plagues a lot of us is saying no when we know we can't do, or when we can't make time for certain things. So what are the 3 steps to saying no to relationships and activities that take away from our energy?
Well, first of all, it's a little bit more than 10 minutes a day, just in terms of getting 15%. If we want to get technical about the maths, it's about 1.2 hours. But not that I want to get technical. Probably the best way to say no to something is to, first of all, really define what's important to you. Do you know what's important? Do you know why you would say no? Do you know, if working at the station is absolutely critical and you absolutely love doing it, then keep doing it. But it means you might have to say no to other stuff to accommodate that. So for me, it's being really clear on defining why something is important to you, which means you then have to think about other aspects of your world. So look, you're all such youngsters. I feel like your nana or your grandma sitting here talking to you. But back in the olden days, I used to work in IT, and there was a phrase we used to use called defragging, which was when we'd have to, sort out a computer disk that had, gotten a little bit messed up. But basically what it would do was would compress data onto one part of the disk and then free up space. And so when we're trying to find space, we're trying to figure out how to run our world a little bit better, we should cluster or batch work together so that we then have longer chunks of time to do work. That would be the second thing. And the third thing is, can you just get other people to do stuff? Like, can you just palm it off on other people, otherwise known as delegating? Are you able to do that? That's a really great way of saying, no, not me, but maybe someone else. That might work.
Yeah, no, that's always great whenever you can do that. But I think another thing that is setting kind of physical, emotional, and mental limits on yourself, just to make sure you don't overcommit or burn yourself out. There are 5 W's you have for that.
Well, that's actually one aspect. Probably the more useful thing to talk about would be the 4 areas of space that I encourage people to look at. So how do you create more thinking, breathing, living, and working space? And the 5 W's about asking yourself, when it comes to me spending my time with people, who are the right people? What should I be doing? Where should I be doing it? What should I be doing? And why am I doing stuff? It's kind of related to the relationships aspect of that, and making sure that you're spending time with the right people in your world.
Right. And when it comes to the differences between personal life and work life, especially when it comes to boundaries, what is the difference between them, and why are both important to your health, especially in certain areas where that line can become blurred between professional and personal boundaries and life overall?
Yeah, I think this has been something that's been prevalent in the last couple of years as the pandemic pushed us to work from home, and sometimes, and maybe not in your case, I can see you're all in studio there and you're all masked up. It's like, are you all together in one room? Because for me, it looks like you are. Okay, so good on you for being all masked up, all power to you. But, for many people who had to work from home and they didn't have what we would call the contextual markers that said, I used to wake up in the morning, I'd shower and breakfast, and then I'd commute to the office, and then work would happen. And then I would leave work, come home, and then home would happen. While we were working from home, and this was a major inspiration for the book, was that those contextual markers were all blurred. And so people just ended up pretty much starting work from the moment they woke up, and the last thing they did was shut their computer lid before they'd go to sleep. And as you said before, sleep is absolutely paramount. Rest is paramount to be able to bring your best self to work and do your best work when you're there.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I know we were talking about being able to say no, which is something that's, I think, hard for all of us. How do you like learn to say no? I think like just recognizing when you need to is like something in itself, but I think actually doing it's a whole other beast.
I reckon it's something about letting go of the angst or the guilt around it. I know most people would rather have you be upfront with them than kind of make up some story. So the first thing is just be okay with the fact that you're just being truthful around it. And it also comes back to respect. And I reckon you can say anything to anyone. It's about the how that you do it. And so when you're saying no to someone for something or whatever, when you're doing your own boundaries, there's being respectful about it, and also giving people context or a reason. So there's been a pile of research that says that, I could say to you, no, I don't want to do it. You could be grumpy at me. But if I say, no, I can't do this right now because insert context, people are more inclined to be okay with that. And the other thing I'd say to you is, make sure that you're carrying the assumption that it's okay, that people are going to be reasonable about that. I sometimes think in our heads, we code people as unreasonable when they're actually not. I know that you might be able to give me examples of people who are unreasonable, but in my experience, I believe everyone comes to work to do the best they can with the resources they have available to them. They're very, reasonable. It's just that sometimes we in our heads get a bit wound up about it and make up stories that maybe aren't true.
Right. And while we were talking about this, a big thing I've realized since coming to college is, you have to be able to adapt to a possibly different lifestyle. And that's not something I've been good with, like realizing that like maybe the schedule I've been living with for the past X years isn't going to work perfectly. So in the book, you talk about how to develop a capacity to cope with change. How can one do that?
So the capacity that we're referring to here is adaptive capacity. And so the idea is that we have, if we imagine it this way, so often we talk about the length of our fuse. And what I mean by that is, something happens and do you get triggered or do you react really quickly? And when we do that, it's because we haven't given our space distance between this thing happening and then choosing our response to that. So Stephen Covey talked about that in his very famous book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But this idea of adaptive capacity goes a little bit beyond that. It says that I make the space and I protect time in my schedule so that I have room to think, room to adapt, and room to respond. So, for example, in a college lifestyle, it might be that if I'm absolutely booked out, flat out, doing heaps of stuff, there's no room in my schedule, some cool opportunity may come up, and I just haven't got the space to be able to take advantage of that. So there's lots of stories about, during the pandemic, everyone talked about pivoting during the last couple of years. I know that's the right. Terrible P word. But those who were able to do that successfully were those that had both the space, the mental capacity, and the resources to be able to react when change happened.
Okay. Yeah, totally. And one thing that's just kind of crazy to me is you've written 10 books since 2014, which is just like, wow, that's incredible. But also, how has your views on time changed during that 8-year period? Do you think it takes kind of that time to truly understand the value of it?
Like, that's hard to say. So I've always been pretty good at managing time myself. You can't write 10 books without doing that and having a level of focus, etc. But I was raised in a military family. So I reckon my ability to just get stuff done and be very structured and organized and scheduled, etc., probably came from having a father in the Navy and moving around and all associated with that. But my books all haven't been about time. So it's only been the last 3 that have been about time. And mostly what my views have been around is that just how much more people generally are expected to fit more in to their days, and how this idea of urgency is the new black, that we're constantly in this state of urgency and everything's urgent. There's an assumption that things are urgent, and it's just not true. It's a construct, that we've made that isn't true, so.
Yeah. Going off of the whole like time is money saying, where it creates the urgency, it gets hectic, especially like you don't have to be a full grown adult, like high school, middle school, to whenever. It's you're taught urgency, and
Oh yeah.
it can eat some people alive.
Totally. And I don't think it should. And just some of us create the urgency for ourselves through our assumptions. So someone says, hey, I need this, by Friday, and you may, massively react and, oh my God, that actually means Thursday night, etc., because the way in which you constructed in your head. But I actually, not a lot of our day-to-day living and work, there's exceptions to what I'm about to say, of course, but it's not like someone's going to die if I don't get something done by a certain time. And yet we do have this, not so much time as money, but almost like this notion that some dramatic thing will happen if I don't operate according to this level of urgency or this urgency schedule. So maybe it's an age thing. As I'm looking at all of you, I'm sitting here at 55. It's easy to say that.
No, that's definitely something.
Fine.
Yeah, that's definitely something I do. I know whenever this is actually something I've noticed. Every time I go to buy a coffee, it's just like, I feel like there is such a weird urgency to like, even just like taking like the card out or like anything. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it could just be that you need the caffeine, my friend. It's like,
Oh,
and get
that's
the coffee.
definitely a
You
part
just
of
need
it.
to dose up on a bit of caffeine. As someone who drinks tea, I kind of don't get that. I don't get the coffee thing. But
I'm with
yeah, I do like my cup of tea.
And so when it comes to being productive, especially in this age of urgency, why are the first 2 hours of the day so important when it comes to that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. It's actually part of our natural body clock. So for most of us, we are early birds, or about 80% of us are what we call early birds or moderates. So our body clock is designed for mental agility in the morning and physical dexterity in the afternoon. I'm generalizing a little bit. And so any of us who are knowledge workers or are being hired for our smarts, so we have to, or we're at college where we're really needing to use our smarts. It's best to do the stuff that requires high levels of mental intensity or attention in the morning, because we're just better at that in the morning. And then in the afternoon, anything that's routine or ritual or process oriented is best for the afternoon. And so it comes from this idea that there's a better time of day for just about anything. And we should be paying attention to the clock in our body more than the one on the wall.
Right.
So yeah, but I'm an early bird. So, and I know that I've got to tell you again, back in the olden days when this little person was at, we don't call it college down under, we call it uni. When I was young, I thought I was a night owl because I used to stay up late, studying, cramming, all that sort of stuff, and then sleep all day. But turns out, no, I'm actually very much an early bird.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And if anyone is interested in learning more about you or any of your books, even the One Day Refund, where can they find more about you?
Easiest place is to just go to donnamcgeorge.com, where there's all the necessary bits of information are right there. I'm also a shameless self-promoter on social media. So, you'll find me on all good social media platforms. And thanks very much for having me. It's been great.
Thanks so much for coming on.